The little girl stood in the school parking lot, clutching a handmade card against her chest while tears rolled down her cheeks. Around her, mothers and fathers walked hand in hand with their children after the Family Appreciation Day event, but she remained frozen near the gate, staring at the empty space beside her father. Then she looked up at him with eyes full of innocent sadness and asked if every family was supposed to have a mother. That single question shattered something deep inside him. Every morning, before the city fully awakened, Nathan Cole was already up. The sun had barely climbed over the buildings when he would prepare breakfast, iron a tiny school uniform, and carefully braid his daughter's hair. He had learned everything by himself. He had learned to make pancakes shaped like stars, to remove grass stains from dresses, and even how to comfort a child after nightmares. 5 years earlier, his wife had passed away unexpectedly after a sudden illness, leaving him alone with their newborn daughter. At first, people had offered sympathy. Then they had offered advice. Eventually, they offered judgment. They wondered how a man could properly raise a little girl alone. They believed he needed help. Some suggested he remarry quickly. Others simply pitied him. But Nathan never complained. Every evening after finishing his work as an accountant for a medium-sized company, he rushed home because his daughter Ava always waited by the window. The moment she saw his old blue car turn onto the street, she would run to the door with the biggest smile imaginable. That smile became the center of his world. Their small house was old and needed repairs. The roof leaked during heavy rain, and the paint had faded long ago. Yet the house was filled with warmth. There were crayon drawings taped to every wall. There were photographs of birthdays celebrated with homemade cakes. There were tiny shoes beside the entrance and stuffed animals on the couch. To Nathan, it was not a perfect life. It was a beautiful one. One bright afternoon, Ava's school organized Family Appreciation Day. Parents were invited to join activities and celebrate together. Most children arrived with both parents. Some came with grandparents. Nathan took the day off and attended, wearing the nicest shirt he owned. He tried his best. He participated in every game and applauded every performance. He laughed with Ava and painted pictures beside her. But as the event progressed, he noticed her becoming quieter. She looked at other families. She watched mothers fixing ribbons in their daughters' hair and fathers wrapping protective arms around everyone during family photographs. When the event ended, she held her handmade card against her chest and asked that heartbreaking question. Nathan knelt beside her. The sunlight illuminated the tears in her eyes, and suddenly he felt helpless. He had conquered sleepless nights, financial struggles, and years of loneliness, but he did not know how to answer this simple question. He hugged her tightly. That evening, after Ava had fallen asleep, Nathan sat alone in the kitchen. He looked at old photographs of his wife and remembered her laughter. He remembered the promises they had made about raising their daughter together. The silence in the house felt heavier than ever. The following week, Nathan's company announced a major event. The chief executive officer himself would visit their branch. The CEO, named Charles Whitmore, was famous throughout the industry. Newspapers described him as brilliant, disciplined, and enormously successful. They also described him as distant and difficult to approach. Employees spent days preparing. When Charles finally arrived, everyone seemed nervous. He was tall and elegantly dressed, but there was an unmistakable sadness in his eyes. During lunch, he surprised everyone by sitting among the employees instead of remaining in a private office. The conversation eventually turned toward families. Some spoke proudly about vacations and celebrations. Then Charles noticed a photograph on Nathan's desk. It showed Nathan and Ava standing beneath a tree laughing. Charles stared at the picture longer than expected. He quietly said he wished he had a happy family like theirs. Several people laughed softly because everyone assumed he was joking. After all, Charles had wealth, influence, and everything society considered success. Nathan smiled politely and replied with his own joke. He said his kid needed a mom. Everyone chuckled, but Charles did not laugh. Instead, he looked at the photograph once more and seemed lost in thought. For the rest of the day, he remained unusually quiet. A few days later, Nathan received an unexpected message asking him to attend a meeting with the CEO. Confused and nervous, he entered Charles's office. The CEO was standing near the window. The room was enormous, yet somehow it seemed empty. Charles surprised him by asking about Ava. He wanted to know her age, favorite hobbies, and whether she liked school. As Nathan spoke about his daughter, his face naturally brightened. Charles noticed. After a long silence, the CEO admitted something he had never shared with anyone at the company. He had once been married. Years of pursuing success had consumed his life. He worked constantly and missed birthdays, anniversaries, and family dinners. Eventually, his wife could not bear the loneliness. She left, taking their young daughter with her. Charles searched for them for years, but his former wife had passed away in another country, and he had been unable to locate his daughter afterward. He had become one of the richest executives in the region, but every evening he returned to a luxurious penthouse that felt completely empty. Seeing the photograph on Nathan's desk had reminded him of everything he had lost. Nathan listened quietly. For the first time, he saw the man behind the expensive suits and impressive reputation. He saw someone deeply lonely. A strange friendship slowly formed between them. Charles began visiting the branch more often. Sometimes he invited Nathan for coffee after work. Eventually, he asked if he could meet Ava. Still, he agreed. One sunny Saturday afternoon, Charles visited their home. The old house looked tiny compared to his enormous mansion. Ava greeted him with curiosity. Within an hour, she had convinced him to color pictures with her and attend an imaginary tea party involving stuffed animals. Nathan watched in amazement. The powerful CEO laughed more during those few hours than anyone at the company had ever seen. Before leaving, Charles paused at the doorway. He looked at the drawings covering the walls. Then he looked at Nathan and Ava. For the first time in years, tears filled his eyes. After that day, he returned often. He brought books, puzzles, and art supplies, but he never tried to replace anyone. He simply enjoyed being present. Ava grew attached to him. She called him her fancy friend because he always wore expensive clothes. Months passed. One evening, Ava developed a severe fever. Nathan rushed her to the hospital. As he sat beside her bed, exhausted and frightened, another figure suddenly appeared in the doorway. It was Charles. He had left an important business conference immediately after hearing the news. Without hesitation, he remained at the hospital throughout the night. At one point, he gently covered the sleeping child with a blanket and looked at her with remarkable tenderness. Nathan realized something profound. Charles was not only finding comfort in their little family, he was rediscovering his ability to love. A few weeks later, Charles made a decision that shocked everyone. He announced plans to reduce his workload and establish a foundation supporting single parents. He said success meant nothing if it could not be shared with people you loved. The story attracted media attention. Reporters praised his transformation, but Charles ignored the headlines. His greatest joy came from simple things: helping Ava with homework, eating homemade cookies, listening to Nathan describe his day. One afternoon, while cleaning an old storage room in his mansion, Charles discovered a dusty box containing photographs and letters from years earlier. Among them was a small bracelet his daughter had worn. Attached was a note mentioning an orphanage where she had once stayed temporarily. Hope surged inside him. With renewed determination, he began searching again. Weeks later, investigators finally found her. She was alive. She was 23 years old and working as an elementary school teacher in another city. Their reunion was far from perfect. Years of separation could not disappear instantly. There were tears, awkward silences, and painful memories. Yet, there was also forgiveness. Charles's daughter, Emma, agreed to give him another chance. For him, it felt like a miracle. The following Sunday, he invited Nathan and Ava to join them for lunch. The gathering was simple. Sunlight poured through the windows. People laughed. Stories were exchanged. At one point, Charles looked around the table. His daughter was smiling. Ava was drawing pictures. Nathan was helping prepare dessert. He suddenly remembered the day he had looked at that photograph and wished for a happy family. Back then, he believed family was something he had permanently lost, but life had given him another opportunity. And strangely, it had all begun because a single father made a joke and said his child needed a mom. As evening approached, Ava slipped her tiny hand into Charles's and asked if he was happy. He looked around the room again. Then he smiled through tears. Yes, for the first time in many years, he truly was.